is some comment about the wire sparking on its own as you asked for your last video, and I did big comment, so I wrote it to remember what to say, and it says like, higher, my opinion is the reason the wire sparks on its own for me is because by the shaking of the wire from the magnet, the wire starts to shake in kind of vibration or just movement transferred by the transformer through both coils, resonating because of their material, dimensions and distance from each other, which make them to resonate. And as you said, after I realized the iron makes the resonance above, all around too, the wire keeps shaking, and I say shaking because I don't think it moves in a perfectly conceptual, always equal shape. So we are at the point of the transformer, and I think the reverberation is the point of communication. The coil starts emitting a sound, audible or not audible, which makes the other coil to move. Then, because when there is movement, the same movement travels easier through it. And this is because I experience myself with voice, that when there is a constant noise around, like a motor rotation noise, a constant noise around, if you tune your voice, your own voice, more or less the same sound of the noise, you can notice, or I notice, the sound sounds louder. It's kinda amplified. I think it's because the waves overlap each other. The shaking is more or less equal, and one mounts to the other and makes the pushing go far in distance, or makes it stronger, keeping down other vibrations around. It's easy to experiment, so it also happens with cavities, rooms, or you experience sometimes you make a sound with your voice or musical instrument and it gets reverb or resonance in a room or cavity space, and it keeps on more than other notes or pitches of sound. Because resonance is just that in case. Excuse me, I'm quite sick at the moment. So this, if there is more mass, this back to the transformer, okay? If there is more mass in the side where the power comes and less in the other side, is the one coil is bigger than the other, takes less force to the amount of power to go through the secondary, which for each shake the big mass does, the little mass jumps more, but it all happens inside, into resonance, wavelines of sound, wavelines of shape, pushings, micro volumes of matters, very little, right? And, and then the distance of the first spark gap, I see it's tighter, it's closer, the is shorter the gap, because there has been no other spark gap yet, and the materials have to be much closer to resonate with the pushings of one of them, which is charged to the other, which, because they are similar in material structure, will resonate, and the air will have to shape itself to make the resonance going through. That's why the vacuum spark gaps looks different, I think, with no lightning, and looks like just like light, I think, as this video I see. uh, it's it's from your own list of videos. As you see, here is the lightning as we know, the sparks, and here is the vacuum spark gap. There's no air, so there's no friction with any particles of the air. It's more, it's tiny, is the communication is better, right? It hasn't got to push the air as the sorry as the lightning does. It spreads around all the air, right? So it has to push all the air around, and I think it seems uh, for me that the voltage and the hertz gets more value through through the spark gap, because the current is pushing the air around the spark gap, so it makes it flow. It's like the water on a rack. It's pushing the air around the spark gap, making kind of vortex shape, I think, which makes the receiver part being smashed with the starting voltage from the wire plus the speed and the particles of air uh, trying to fill the space the current flow is pushing away the particles. So more particles comes to the space the others were, which are pushed by the current. So it is pushing, the particles go away, and other particles come to fill the 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 space the others were. So I think that's why uh, then that's why you burn the tungsten, I think, because of that pushing of the pushed air. So the air is pushing so fast, I think, it's making the friction there. It's getting so hot, so pushed, uh, and that flow of the air, I think, it's translated in longer distance. The resonance will felt, or will be through, so we can reach. I think that's voltage. That's longer distance the resonance will reach. That's why you get a longer spark gap after, I think, because those the air itself, it's making it the current to increase. It's like itself is making a vortex there, it's pushing it, I think. So more times of shakings, the hertz, more times of the shakings because of the air pushing too. So the air is pushing and it's making another difference to the hertz of the starting current before spark gap, because now you have the air between. So it's it's more matter in between, so it is getting more smash between. I think that, like when you were tapping the iron, you got hertz. So I think now the air is making more hertz by shutting particles of the air to the other end of the tungsten of the spark gap. That's why there are more hertz, I think. So because of the composition of the air, it's more or less the same between both spark gaps. Because the current has passed one jet, I think the current carries the shape she had to go through the air in the first spark gap. So when it reaches the second spark gap, it's able to travel longer distance because carries the she has inside now the current flow she had to jump the air. So it has imprinted in the current the shape it had when she gone through the air. So the second spark gap, I think that's why it's easier to jump to. So more voltage, I think it's more pushed, and the shape itself of the wave too helps to jump longer distance. So the shape to go through the air is repeated easier than it was to make in the first spark gap. That's what I think. I see your second spark gap is longer in gap. The gap has more distance between. I think that's why you can jump more distance. Finally, the reason why the wire sparks on its own is because it carries the shape of the air, so it's easy for the current to shape itself through the air again. That's my opinion. Okay. And then I have a doubt. I don't know if it's possible so to make the spark on its own only in one spark gap. Yeah, as you said, you tried other looping to spark wires on its own and it didn't work. So I think it has to be on a resonance first before it can push through a wire itself which has a current on it. So if there is no shaping of the wave, if it's not resonance between, if there's no gap, it doesn't make the spark on its own. And then I wanted to say, I see. Sorry, I'm trying to. Yeah. it seems the earth storms are quite like this. I think the the winds make different layers of resonance and sounds between tiny volumes, densities and materials on the of the air, and ends with lightning when the resonance is distributed to every resonant thing it finds on its way, like a spring with kind weight push it out like a spring. So that's something I wrote too. Okay, that was all the writing. I will paste it, and I think that's pretty much it. So it's just my opinion. Okay, it's very long, but it doesn't mean because it's long that it's right. Okay, so I hope you kind of enjoy this, and maybe you can get something out of it. See you soon, Gerard. Get you there. Hey, excuse me, something missing here. Uh, I wanted to say something. I watched your last video again about the sparking on its own wire, and you mentioned some people says it comes, this goes through time and space, but I don't think this is exactly how I think that is achieved through time and space. I think the way to go is through continuously accelerated motion, and I don't think it's exactly what is happening here. So then you speak about electrons. I don't know about electrons, so I just don't think I have the same concept about electrons as everybody else. I think most likely everybody has its own concept about what's that. So I don't think it's clean to speak about electrons, for me at least. So then I think when the waves, when the, let's say a current from a wire, it's overlapped to sorry, it's passed to another one. When, like the transformer does, it removes the resistance, because between it's nothing to stop that resonance, right? The structures similar, doesn't cares what is between. I think that's why there are different types of communication, because depending on the shape, how the motion is transferred, there is more resistance or less resistance, and it goes to speeds like we will call instantly, right? We say it's instant, so it can make such high speeds transferring. And the last thing was sorry, here it goes. The last thing was that I think this is this my opinion, my theory, what's going on here as I said, could be tested by having a vacuum spark gap, as the video one shows. So if you have a vacuum spark gap, it shapes in the shape of the vacuum, wherever it is, right? So we could try to spark that wire on its own and see if it travels through the air, if that loop is able to spark the wire on its own too, as you do between the air. So that way, with a vacuum spark gap, which I don't have, maybe you don't have to, and it's quite tricky to make, right? But I think that could be the way to test if my theory is right. If the current through spark gap of the vacuum has imprinted the shape of the vacuum, right? Or maybe other gas, and then if it's able to jump on its own, it says my theory is not right, it's wrong. But if, sorry, I don't know what I said. If the wire sparks its own, it means my theory is wrong, right? If it doesn't, it will prove I'm right, because it didn't carry the shape of the air around to shape it itself and to be able to spark a wire with a current through it, because sparking on a wire with a current through it, which is what is not able to do in ordinary way, but it is able to transfer it to another wire like a spark gap does. It's not connected, but it jumps. But if that wire has a current on it already, I think it won't, because it will be like trying to do it without the spark gap, right? It's already a current to it, so it won't work, maybe. And that's pretty much it, I think. So see ya.